Hey, this is Al Bain from Al Bain for Leather, and I'd like to talk to you about a subject that's dear to my heart, and that is sewing machines. The reason you're here is that you probably just bought a sewing machine and are very new to sewing. And like the title says, it's Intro to Sewing 101. So you got your sewing machine. You've probably watched a bunch of YouTube videos on how to get it set up. There it is, sitting in the middle of your living room, your dining room, your new workshop, your old workshop, whatever the case is, but there's this mystery machine. What do you do next? What is the first thing you do? Well, let's talk about that. Let's spend a few minutes dedicating a little bit of time to the very beginning of the process so that in the long term you can benefit immensely, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do is get yourself a little composition book, maybe tether a pen and a piece of string to it, and start a dear diary of your sewing life with this particular machine. Whatever that machine is. It could be a Cobra Class 26, a Cobra Class 4, a 7 Class, 5550 BB. It could be a Conso, it could be a Texo, any machine that you want. Start yourself a little logbook about that machine and its life and your experiences with it. Do yourself a favor. First thing you do, mark it My Logbook and put the name of the machine on it. Flip it over on the back, open the first page and start a glossary of terms. If you hear a word, whether I'm talking about it or somebody else is talking about it, you don't know what it is, write it down. Figure out what that word means and write the definition to it. And then ultimately, over some time, you're going to be using the same vocabulary all the pros are using. There's no more doohickeys or whatchamacallits or thingamajigs. Let's refer to the parts of the sewing machine with professional vocabulary so that when we are communicating, that you can speak about the part without having to describe it with funny terminology. So with that little logbook, I want you to consider keeping an ongoing story about your sewing machine in your logbook. So today being day one, write the introduction. I watched a video by this guy, Al Bain, and he was talking about the first day of sewing machine ownership. I assembled my machine by watching this guy's video, maybe a Maker's Leather Supply video. It could be a Van Plu video, could be one of my videos, I don't know. But the machine, you assembled it somewhere, document the place and the video or the instruction book or whatever it is that helped you get that machine built, so that if you have questions in the future, you can go back and reference them, because you might forget where you saw that video and now you can't go back in the future. Write about your experiences with the machine. Oh man, it was really heavy and I couldn't lift it by myself. Or I got it into the table by myself, but then I couldn't do this or that. Write it all down. It'll help you remember. But you know what the cool thing about it is? That machine, if you take care of it, will last generations into your future. You might not be here anymore. Your great-grandkids might be working with that machine in the future, and they'll be able to read your story. It'll all be right in there. It'll be talking about that wallet you made, or that jacket that you built, or the chaps, or when you had to fix the upholstery in your truck. So, as I was saying, keep a running story. Make sure you have a date, the time more or less, maybe even what the weather's doing, because the weather will change the way your machine acts. So, keep little stories like, today I intend to make this. And you document what it is. It's a wallet or a purse or a belt. Log the type of leather that it's made out of, or whatever fabric it's made out of. Put in what needle you intend to use, what thread you intend to use, what stitch length, how much pressure on the presser foot, how your machine is calibrated so that you know where your starting point is. And if something has to change, you know where to change it. And then a year or two from now, maybe you have to redo that wallet or that project, make another copy of it because your customer was so happy with it. You can go back in your logbook and look back in there and say to yourself, Wow, I used that one thread. I don't know where I can get it. Oh, let me see. I can go buy that thread from the leather machine company again, because that's where I bought it the first time. Let's look them up and see if you can buy an identical type of thread. The logbook information will help you immensely. As you're using the machine, time's going to go by. We recommend that you lubricate the machine every 8 hours of operation. I don't know anybody who's stitching 8 hours a day with the needle just going up and down all day long. Myself, I get really tired around 4 hours in. Keep a running tally on how long you're running the machine. We recommend lubricating the system every 8 hours, and also we recommend changing the needle every 8 hours. Just because I'm at the shop working at the table doesn't mean the machine's operating for 8 hours. So keep a running tab of the elapsed time between service intervals. We recommend that you change the needle and oil the machine every 8 hours of operation. So let's hypothetically say I'm making a guitar strap and it takes me 5 minutes per guitar strap to stitch it together. And I'm going to make 50 guitar straps. I'm going to get out my calculator. 5 times 50 equals 250 minutes. Divided by 60 gives me 4.16 hours. So if I'm making 50 guitar straps a day, I'm going to change the needle every other day. I'm going to lubricate the machine every other day. What if you're operating at half that capacity, 25 a day? Guess what? Every 4 days. What if you're only making 1 strap a day? Wow, you're going to need quite a long time between service intervals and changing the needle. But you don't want to go too long. A lot of people, I ask them, how often do you change your needle? Oh, when it breaks. That's the worst time to change the needle. Change the needle after every 8 hours, because the friction of the needle going in and out of the material makes heat. Heat changes the temper in the needle. Now the needle gets really brittle, and instead of flexing, it breaks. And when it breaks, it scratches the inside of the throat, maybe damages the hook, and creates all kinds of problems that you don't really need. One more thing I'd like to encourage you to do in your logbook is document your home position. The home position is the everyday setup that your machine lives in routinely. I can tell you that my Cobra Class 4 routinely runs 346 bonded nylon, a number 26 needle with the leather point on it, 6 or 7 stitches per inch with as much presser foot tension as I can possibly get on it. That's my home position. Now let's say I change my home position. Instead of making my everyday guitar straps that I do all the time, I'm going to make a duffel bag. And I'm going to change from 346 thread to 277 or 207. And from a 26 needle to a 24 or a 23. Well, I'm going to log that in my book. Put that information in the logbook. Do my test stitch, because we test on a piece of scrap. And then if I have to adjust the tension, I'm going to write the log tension in, increase both tension devices 1/4 turn each or whatever. So then when I go back to my original home position, I'm going to just be able to go back, turn a quarter, change the needle, change the thread, back to lickety split. No problem, without even having to think twice, because I logged it. And then guess what? Add that logbook entry. So keep a running tally of the elapsed time, keep a running tally of the oil service interval, and maintain a log entry about what your home position is. Maintain a documentation of what your home position is doing, and then that way you can get back to your everyday home position without really having to think too much about it. Once you got your logbook in order, it'll be very simple as just writing down a couple little notes and any special details. Here's what will help immensely when you encounter a problem. Let's hypothetically say you're sewing your favorite belts, boom, boom, boom. And now you hear a funny little click. I was sewing my belts together today, and then around the fourth or fifth one, I heard a little tick, 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 and it was getting louder. And then suddenly it went away. Well, it might be insignificant, but it deserves to be in the logbook. The next day, you're sewing the same kind of belts, but now you've got twice as many to do, and the tick went from a tick, tick, tick to a knock, knock, knock. Uh-oh, machine's still sewing fine, it's just making a funny knocking sound. Come back into the tips and tricks or something and say, hey, you know, I was sewing along and I had a tick in the machine yesterday, but now it's turning into a knock. Head scratcher. Don't really know what that is, but at least we're thinking about it. The next day, here you are sewing again, and now that knock turns into a clunk, ka-clunk, ka-clunk, ka-clunk. Uh-oh, now we've got a real problem. But since we know it started 3 days ago and it's been progressively getting worse, what could it possibly be? Well, there are a couple little things that could be going wrong. The main shaft bearing could be getting looser, and the main shaft is wobbling around. The hand wheel is bumping into the side of the bearing. It's a really easy fix if you know how. So you come into the tips and tricks and you tell us, hey, that tick, 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 knock, knock, knock turned into clunk, clunk, clunk. And we tell you, hey, look at this little screw, put your screwdriver in there, give it a little 1/4 inch tighten and report back. You go in there, do that. It all went away. Yay, high five. Everything's cool. And we didn't really have to suffer very much, but the logbook has all that data in it. So come back in the logbook and summarize the problem. Tell yourself, hey, you know, we tightened up this screw. Maybe take a picture of the place where the screwdriver is, the little hole in the casting where the screwdriver is, print it, put it in your logbook. And then the next time it happens, you know exactly how to fix it. And now you're empowered and you're not relying on anybody to help you because you have the knowledge and you've documented it and you can remember, oh yeah, I remember that happened a few years ago. Go back and look in there, find the answer and solve it for yourself. Enough about the logbook for now. Let's sign off, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about the next thing that you're gonna do with your sewing machine in the real time. So the next scene, you'll see me sitting at my machine and we'll talk about a couple skill developing exercises that will ensure good sewing and develop some skills for you so that you end up developing intuition, and then maybe later on you can teach this class for me instead of me doing it, and then you can learn how to pay it forward. Let's get to the fun part about why we're here. This is a Cobra Class 17 sewing machine from the Leather Machine Company. This is a really awesome sewing machine. It has so many similar features to the Consew, to the Juki, to the Adlers. Like, they all have these common things. And once you as an operator get familiar with a few basic ideas that are common to all the machines, you can practically operate every single one of those systems. You just have to develop a feel for the particular machine. Let's take a look. They all have thread, right? So they have a stand somewhere that is going to support the thread, whether it be a cone or a spool or whatever. There's a system in place to support the thread. The modern systems happen to be thread stands, so a cone and a little post with a little arm and a little thread guide that helps guide the thread toward the machine. Then again, we're going to guide threads, so there's little gadgets that help you direct the thread into the critical components. A little thread guide is kind of an incidental component, but a thread tension device, a take-up lever, and then the eye of the needle. The thread must go through the eye of the needle or else it's never going to sew. So all the guides are doing is guiding the thread to its destination. So there's a video that is on my playlist. You can go find it. I'll put a link in the description below. It's called The Anatomy of the Tension Device. So this device is exactly like the one on the Class 4, except it's a much smaller version of the same thing. Okay, it works exactly the same way. Here's a take-up lever. The take-up lever on this machine works exactly the same as on this machine as it does on the 18, on the 7 class, on the Class 26. They all do exactly the same thing. So then again, the guides guide the thread to their necessary components. You need thread tension, so you have to guide the thread through the tension device. You have to pull the knot or seat the knot, take up the slack out of the knot, so the take-up lever is in play. Then you have to have a needle. There's a device, a needle holder, or the needle clamp holds the needle in place. And then ultimately the eye and the scarf of the needle, the working parts of the needle, have to be understood a little bit so that you can, number one, install it into the machine correctly. On this machine, it just happens to be that the long groove is on the left and the little scarf is on the right. It's important that you understand how your machine and the needle relates to your system. Most systems have the long groove on the left and the scarf on the right, but there are some machines like the overlocks and my Conso zigzag machine where the needle, the long groove, must face the front. You put it in like a conventional machine and guess what? It's not going to work. So the fine details of your machine will be unique to yours, but that's easy because once you log it in your logbook, you're not going to have any problems. So you're asking yourself, okay, now all this jibber jab and whatnot, what is it that I have to do right before I'm going to sew? This is where the moment of truth is, right? You turn on the machine, you fire that thing up, you put your little piece of leather in there, and you step on the pedal and bang, something goes bad. We've had it happen a million times. I just bought my machine. I started to sew and now there's all these knots and now the hand wheel's stuck. I heard it 100 times in the tips and tricks group. And that's the purpose of doing this video, is that very first moment when you go to start up your sewing machine. You've done everything to get it to this point. Now what's the first thing? So there's a rule. The operator must control the thread at all times. Say that for me. The operator must control the thread at all times. Write that in your logbook. The operator must control the thread at all times. So when we start sewing, we often recommend that you hold the thread back and away at 1 o'clock for the first 3 stitches. See, the thread is going back and away at 1 o'clock. So it's really important to do that. I have the needle thread and the bobbin thread. See the bobbin thread, this lower one. Yeah, but how do I get the bobbin thread to come up and be in that position? Uh-oh, we have to go one step further back. So let's talk about the bobbin installation into the machine. All the leather machine company machines have these basic bobbins. So your bobbin, this one happens to have a bobbin case. We load it in a particular way. We have videos discussing the fine details of loading the bobbin. But what you should do with your particular machine is find the bobbin loading procedure for your particular machine, watch that segment with your logbook, and take notes. Once you see that segment and written down the notes, do the process of whatever the step-by-step is, do it 15 times and load it into the machine. And do it again 15 times. It only takes about 5 minutes to do it, but once you do, you're developing a feel for it. Get the feel for it. Load it into the machine 15 times. Develop the feel in your hands. Learn how it feels. I do this with my eyes closed. I don't need to look. Did I get it on the spring? Yeah, I got it under there. Eyes are closed again. There you go. You can have that feel too. I don't recommend running the machine with your eyes closed. Poke yourself with the finger. That's not going to be a good time. But I've done it so many times. I have all this muscle memory that makes it natural. Once you develop that, you won't struggle with it. And the less struggle at the machine, the better off you are. So develop that feel. Get the hang of installing the bobbin correctly so that when you run out of bobbin, it's not a big problem. Just grab the new bobbin off the winder. Uh-oh, bobbin winder. There's another little skill set that's going to benefit you once you learn how to do it. So learn how to load a bobbin onto the winder and get it running so that it's always got a full one ready to go when you need it. Load the bobbin, wind the bobbin, set it up, good to go. Always have one ready. Get the feel for it. Threading the machine. Go find the step-by-step procedures of how to thread your machine. Rewind the video to the very beginning. Watch it in its entirety. Rewind it again. Take a bunch of notes, write down the step-by-step, make some drawings if you have to. Rewind it to the beginning of the procedure, watch procedure 1, do procedure 1. Watch procedure 2, do procedure 2. Do that 15 to 17 times. Should only take maybe 20 minutes. But by the end of that exercise, you know exactly how to thread that sewing machine. You never have to think about it again. You get a thread tension problem, what's the first thing we do? We have a thread tension problem, it starts skipping stitches, anything like that. Take the thread out of the machine, rethread it, change the needle. I didn't say throw away the needle, just put in a fresh needle to eliminate all doubt. Rethread the system, start over from scratch. 9 times out of 10, that fixes the problem. You don't have to start taking things apart. Just rethread the machine. I've heard countless stories. People, my machine was starting to make funny noises and I started adjusting it. But if you don't know exactly how to adjust it, why are you adjusting it? Just do the simple thing. Change the thread, rethread the machine. If you have a problem, come to the tips and tricks, report back. Say, hey, I was sewing along and it started making these skips. I rethreaded the machine and changed the needle, but it's still doing it. What's next? And we'll come in there and we'll give you some advice. We'll tell you, hey, take a look at this, do that, and 9 times out of 10, boom, boom, really easy to fix. But if you make a compounded mistake by tinkering with the machine, now the original problem's still there because you didn't solve it. You've taken other parts apart and now you have to put them back together. You have a compounded problem. You've made life difficult for yourself for no reason. Learn, number 1, how to thread the machine in its most basic format. Number 2, how to load the bobbin multiple times so you can do it without thinking. Learn how to wind a bobbin. Learn how to ultimately sew and load bobbins while you're sewing. Okay, so now here's the fun part, okay? Are we ready to do that? Let's take the thread all the way out of the system to beyond the take-up lever. So I'm just going to set it over here out of the way. I'm going to take the thread out of the bobbin so there is no thread to tangle up. The hook is empty. There's nothing there. It's just in the most basic configuration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my foot on the pedal. Take a look at my foot down there. My foot is on the treadle. And all I'm going to do is flex my toe. I'm going to make the machine cycle as slowly as I possibly can. Just make it go very slowly. Make it creep along. Just get the feel for what does it take to make it just go. Nice and slow. Now watch, this machine, the motor's set at full speed. Ready? I can step on it and make it go, but that's not giving us any sense of skill development. Just barely flex your toe and make it go as slow as you can. Once you get that feel in your foot, you can do it all day long, over and over. So practice that 20 or 30 times. Take about 5 minutes. Give yourself the feel and the intuition. Learn how much pressure it takes with your foot to just barely get the machine to go. Then, once you get the feel of that and you can do it predictably, then learn what it feels like when it's going real fast. Get the feel for what it takes to make it stop. How long does it take for when you take your foot off to when it's going to stop? It takes a split second. But get the feel for that. This machine is equipped with the electronic positioning system, or the EPS. So it has a needle down and a needle up position. If yours is a standard machine, then you have to get the feel for the past bottom dead center position. So you have to learn how to cycle it with your toe or with your hand, so that way when you make a turn, you're not going to skip a stitch. So learn about the past bottom dead center moment, and then the inverse, the past top dead center, so that you can remove the workpiece. We have videos detailing the spiral pattern exercise that go in depth about why this is an important skill. There'll be a link in the description below, but make sure that you go do those exercises. And I often recommend you take 20 3x3 pieces and do spirals and put a number on them. Number 1, do the exercise, get it done. Do number 2. That takes about an hour to do that. Once you've done 20 of those blocks, guess what? You now have skills and you have intuition, because you know what the machine feels like, you know what it sounds like, you know what the bobbin winder sounds like when it pops open. You have developed some skill. You've invested in yourself on top of investing in this piece of equipment. You bought a beautiful piece of equipment. It's sitting right there, and you deserve to have a good experience with it. But if you just jump in there and start throwing junk in there, and I used to sew when I was a kid, and you get in there and you break the machine within the first 5 minutes of owning it, you're going down the wrong path. You're having a bad day. Your first experience with the machine is a hassle. I want to prevent that for you. I want you to benefit from a little bit of experience that I can give you. And that's what the purpose of this video is. So I will repeat myself. Learn how to load the bobbin properly. Do it 15, 20 times. Learn how to thread the machine. Do it 15 or 20 times so that it's natural. Learn best case diagnostic procedures. Don't sit there and look at the bobbin and see if the thread is properly set. Just rethread the machine whenever you encounter a tension problem. 9 times out of 10, that's the solution. Learn how to load a bobbin properly. Learn how to get your foot to cycle the machine in its slowest move. Learn how to get to the past bottom dead center position, the past top dead center position when you want to, so that you have the control to do these things. Later on, we'll talk about sewing straight lines and sewing on a curve and doing complicated stitch maneuvers. After you get a feel for how the machine works, things will be a lot easier for you. So this time that you're investing here now will pay you for the rest of your life. The rest of the life of that machine in your life will be better for it. Keep good, diligent notes in your logbook. I hope this information helps you. We only ask for one thing. Please pay it forward.